Hi, everyone. My name is Tyler Cox, and I'm the Associate Director of Intercultural Affairs here at LVC. We have a few guests with us today, and we're just going to ask them a few questions about their organization.
Hi, everyone. My name is Renata Williams. I am the Director of Intercultural Affairs and Inclusive Programming, as well as the Assistant Dean of Engagement and Inclusion at Lebanon Valley College. We are so excited to have our guests with us and to just give you an update on what's been going on since the time we were last with, I won't even say, the time we were last with our guests.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Ashley Kaban. I am the volunteer coordinator at POTS, Part of the Solution, which is a nonprofit social services agency in the Bronx, New York.
I'm Dan Roston.
And then my supervisor, Dan, yeah.
Hi, I'm Dan Roston. I'm the Director of Development at Part of the Solution, and so happy to work with Stephanie. She's a fountain of information, and she asked me to join today. And I just want to say one thing. About 150 years ago, I went to Albright College, which is in your neighborhood.
It's in our neighborhood and probably one of our biggest rivals for football.
Mm-hmm.
I know that.
Okay.
I still remember that.
If we beat Albright, we get an extra day off.
I love that. So just as a background, for our Social Justice Institute last March, right as the pandemic was starting, we had a few students, Renata and I, visited POTS in the Bronx and did some service. And it was a really, really great experience. Definitely a little bit different with the pandemic just ramping up. And now we're a year out. We've been in this pandemic for a year, and we just wanted to check in with POTS and see what y'all are up to and how things are going. But before we get into it, so people kind of, know, can you tell us a little bit about what POTS is and what all the services you offer?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you all. Thank you both so much for having us today. It's really a joy to be able to still kind of connect as much as we can virtually with groups who otherwise would have been here, and hopefully next year will look different. But we are a nonprofit social services agency in the Bronx. We started back in 1982, and we started off as just a soup kitchen. Back in the 80s. We've grown since then just because we've recognized that food insecurity is so closely tied to so many other insecurities. And we also don't call ourselves a soup kitchen anymore. We call ourselves a community dining room. A simple name change can really help maintain and protect the human dignity of all who come through our doors. So we have expanded into a multitude of services, and I'll explain what all those are. So we have had this community dining room where we served around 400 to 600 meals every afternoon. We also have a food pantry where clients used to be able to come in and actually pick their own groceries from our little supermarket styled food pantry, which really great sense of empowerment for our clients that they were able to have that choice of what canned goods they wanted or what produce they wanted, etc. We also have day-to-day services. So especially for people who are experiencing homelessness, who might not have access to some of these services, we have showers and mail. Mail is really important. I think around 1,100 clients utilize us for mail services, and still currently do during the pandemic. For anybody who wants to receive their benefits here or anything like that. I know not a lot of people use snail mail nowadays, but it's rather important for our community, especially our community who reside in shelters. We used to have a barber as well who came twice a week and a clothing room as well. That was open 3 times a week. Due to the pandemic, we did have to close that. We also have a medical and dental clinic downstairs. So regardless of insurance and regardless of documentation, anyone could come and receive free medical and dental services. All the other services that I'm also going to say, and that I have said already, are also free as well. Lastly, we have our next step services for. So we see people in a time of crisis, help them reach stability, and then ultimately self-sufficiency to work us out of a job, hopefully one day, right? But that self-sufficiency part happens in our next step services department. So we have a case management team who can help people apply for SNAP or WIC or food stamps, as it is more properly known as, or commonly known as, to help people apply for public assistance or Section 8 housing, which is a special housing voucher, and other applications like that. We have a legal team who help with rental assistance and eviction prevention. helping pay for utilities like light, electricity, and making sure that people are housed, and especially in a time of a pandemic, that's actually rather important. We have an employment and a life coach team. So our employment coach helps people with their resumes, helping people with mock interviews if they haven't been on an interview in a really long time. And then we have a life mentoring coach team. We have 2 life coaches. And they can help anyone with whatever goals they want to achieve. So let's say it's a financial goal or a therapy goal, or getting connected to loved ones that they haven't seen in a while, or maybe getting their GED, which is a high school diploma equivalency, anything like that. We also have a social worker on staff. She works with those who are primarily experiencing mental illness and apply for supportive housing. And then lastly, we also have a tax prep program going on. It happens every year around this time and is currently going on virtually. And so sorry, I think that's a lot. But those are all the services that we have pre-pandemic, and most of them are still running during the pandemic as well.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. As a social worker in training, I am thrilled that you all are doing all those things for your community, and very excited to hear that a lot of the things are still continuing despite the pandemic, that you're still doing the work, you're still in the community.
Yeah, and it's so vastly different. I think Dan and I have talked about this a lot, actually, of just our mission is to be a loving community. And I guess, how do you be a loving community? By also saying, step back 6 feet, especially in the beginning when it was very, it all just seemed so abnormal, but it was all just we want to make sure that we're safe. And so the immediate reaction when somebody approaches me is stop, don't move, and that was really hard. It still is a little bit hard today, but we're a bit more used to it now, but it's still very much just I want to love you, but from a distance, and I promise I'm going to help you, but you have to stay over there. Right. And that was really, really difficult to enforce, and really difficult for us to be okay with, just because we're so used to just talking to our clients so face to face like that. So with food pantry and lunch service, we had, and with all the other services, we regularly had around 600 to 800 people through these doors every day. They're still coming to our doors, they're just outside. So for food pantry and for lunch service specifically, what we'll do is we'll bag up all those groceries, or we'll bag up a to-go meal, and then we'll put it on a table outside the building, and then we'll step back, and then the client will come up and grab it. And so that's what we're doing with that. And then every other service, like case management, legal team, et cetera, they're all working remote over the phone. But we've also found that it's really difficult to work with individuals who might not be super tech savvy, who might not have a cell phone. So we had a contractor, a project person create a booth outside where there's glass, there's a glass window, so that we can talk to people with a little hole in the center so that they can hear us. And that's how we'll accept documents, or we'll answer questions, especially for people who just can't call in. And then the shower program, we stopped the shower program for several months. We didn't pick that up until a few months ago. And that was really hard, seeing our friends and our clients experiencing homelessness who come to us every day, when's the shower program coming? And I'm how is anybody getting a shower nowadays? And thinking of the shelter system, it's, I think, notoriously really not the greatest system in New York City. I'm sure that in other cities it's also not that great. And there was a really big issue, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, but still now, of maintaining physical distance in shelters. And so I know a lot of people who are homeless were not comfortable there, and it's, a whole mess of problems. A whole mess of problems have been exacerbated by the pandemic, and it's been a lot.
Yeah, again, oh, you can go, Renata.
Sorry, I just have a question. So I imagine, yes, so many of the problems that we already knew existed have been exacerbated. Mm-hmm. Have you, through the pandemic, can you speak to any of the, and Tyler, if this is one of your questions, I apologize in advance. Can you speak to the things that have been uncovered since the pandemic, that have been unearthed even beyond what you already knew some of the concerns were? for
Yeah.
communities that already are struggling and are already marginalized.
Yeah. I have 3 things that I want to say. I'm just writing them down so I don't forget to say them. So one thing that we noticed was that was both exacerbated and that revealed such a deeper problem was food insecurity. Again, food insecurity is so linked to so many different services, which is why we have the legal team and case management and other programs, because we had started off in the 80s with just food. But pre-pandemic, we saw around 90 families, 80 to 90 families a day who come in and wanted to go grocery shopping. During the pandemic, I think the most we've seen was 274 families. And it's constantly still now at 200, 250. Today was around 230, I think it was today. And so seeing that was really, really challenging because when families come to us, in such a time of need and in such a time of financial hardship, there are 2 really big options that people have with their next paycheck: pay for rent or pay for food. And we realized that the unemployment rate at its peak during the pandemic in the Bronx was, I think, around 16 to 18%. So when people were laid off from their jobs or furloughed or whatever, they had these 2 options, food and rent. But if they weren't employed, they couldn't pay for either, right? So it was, I think that was a really big problem that is still, that the government is still trying to figure out how to do, whether or not it's canceling rent or having the landlords, participate in some way to provide more tenant relief. Like there was so much of a connection between food and rent that I saw that will continue for the next several years or months, hopefully for not that long, but rent hasn't been canceled. There was a semi-eviction moratorium that has ended and people are now slowly being evicted now, but they couldn't pay for rent. So, and then if you expect rent to be paid when the pandemic is over, do they have to pay for the 12 months rent that they missed, or do they just pick up from, like questions like that have just been like, what is going to happen, and for how many months or for how many years do we need to figure out how to resolve this issue? Because the pandemic has only lasted for a year right now, and hopefully it will end soon. But I can't imagine in regards to food and in regards to rent how many more problems will come. But we've already been seeing people for food. We've already been seeing people for rent for the past 20, 30 years, right? So this is just an addition. And then the other thing was just education. We primarily serve Black and Brown communities who are very, very scared of the vaccine, of the COVID-19 vaccine, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Black and Brown communities have not been treated well in the medical field, right, by medical professionals. And so how do we create a space that acknowledges that, but then also how do we, accept what might help us move forward in this pandemic? I don't even have that answer to that question, but the realization that not many people have access to, simple things like Google, right, or even what to Google, has been such a really big problem.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And as I'm hearing all these things, it makes me feel so fortunate to have these things. And I hope that, whoever's watching right now on our YouTube channel also feels that same thing, to be fortunate to have housing, to have Wi-Fi even, to have these things, to have food. And so thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I love y'all's approach and how, in a way, intersectional these issues are, and that you're recognizing them and trying to be part of the solution, not just for one, but for all of these issues, which I love. You did answer basically all the rest of my questions, but I did have one that I wanted to kind of talk about with POTS as an organization and your internal community that you have there. I think I might have lost you. Oh, you're back. Okay. You just froze on my end for a minute. And that question is mainly about, we're going through it as a nation with the pandemic, as a world, and there is serious burnout for social services. There's serious vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, things like that are happening with those of us who are working in this field and this work. what are you all doing as an organization for your staff to kind of mitigate those issues at POTS?
That's a really good question. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. That's a really good question. This is really tough. I think there are so many struggles and challenges that we've all experienced together as a team, and there's so many challenges and that we've experienced personally. I think, yeah, that's such a good question. We've had so many COVID scares throughout the past year with volunteers and with staff, that it's really interesting. I think I wouldn't consider myself frontline, but I have been hopefully in solidarity with the frontline team. I'm here 4 days of the week in the office, helping when we don't have volunteers or helping when people need a break. There are a lot of times when I just check in with people and I'm like, you good? Do you need I can cover you for a half hour, right? And I feel really honored and grateful that I know how to run food pantry. I also know how to run lunch service. I also know how to run the mail program. And so during a time when half of our staff had to quarantine because of a COVID case in the building, I was the one running all those programs. And it was, we're really grateful that we can all lean on each other. And I think, personally, we've all been there for each other. My father actually died of COVID last year in May, and I found out when I was at work. And it was a very kind of traumatizing moment, I think, for me, and then for my team to witness when I found out, because I was here on site, was really hard. That was really hard. And so I think that we do a lot of things that are kind of off the script or not really by the organization, where we just check in. It's a constant checking in. This room, my office, has often been the cry room, especially in March, April, and May of last year, where people would just come in and be scared and be so scared. And now I'm glad that I was able to be there, but at a time when I needed them, that was also something that they were able to do. So that's really wonderful. As an organization, it's really hard to connect with everyone virtually. Half of us are in the office, the other half are remote. I haven't seen 2 or 3 of my colleagues in 6 months or more. So I think a lot of organizations are struggling with creating that bond and creating that sense of just, professional intimacy, I guess. But we're doing the most that we can with Zoom, I think, and with our organization's a system of getting in contact with each other. I think that's still a work in progress, though, to be quite honest. And if there's any organization out there that is doing Zoom well, please let me know, because I would love to know.
That is so true. I think, I think it's a lot of different organizations are struggling with this. And I do want to, say sorry for your loss. It's been really hard, and it definitely has hit home for a lot of us. And so I know that that's really tough. And I'm glad that your team was there to support you in that and be there for you. And that it seems like y'all are really supporting one another through this. And, that's really amazing that you're doing that. And I think that's what we have to do. We just have to keep trucking, keep pushing, keep being there for one another and for our clients, or in our case, our students. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course. I think it's been interesting because we have a client liaison upstairs, and what he does is he just he fields all the calls that come in. And I remember one day, it was a really hard day, because he was like, Stephanie, it's not even 11 a.m. and 14 people have called me saying that they want food and that a family member of theirs has died of COVID, or it was either that or I can't pay my rent and I'm about to be evicted because I got the notice. And it was really, I think he took off that day. He couldn't, and it's again to your previous question of what has been, or Renata's previous question of what has been exacerbated by this pandemic. There's so much that we're getting over the phone and in person. It's hard. It's really hard, but we're still here, and I don't know how, but I think just with we have a lot of really great team building, I think, that we've done during the pandemic. And I think that has sustained us and will hopefully continue to for as long as we need to be here.
I will echo the sentiments. I am very sorry for your loss, but I'd also like to share what an inspiration you all are for the work that you do and the way that you do it with such care and love and authenticity. Like that, it's such an authentic way that you exist in your community and care for your community and hold space with everyone that becomes part of the Potts family. So cheers to you and cheers to your entire team and all of the work that you do. And we hope to continue to partner with you for years and years and years to come. You're stuck with us. I'll say that. Clearly, I learned about you from my work so many moons ago with Manhattan College. And so you're stuck with me, like indefinitely. So just thank you. Thank you for all that you both, Stephanie and Dan, do for your community. So, and thanks for allowing us to be part of that.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
Yeah, of course.
And hopefully we can be up there again soon to join you all in that great service and that great community. Hopefully we're part of the Potts family too, you know, and we can help y'all whenever.
Yes.
I'm so glad that our college and y'all's organization are connected in this way.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. And yeah, hope to see you soon. I hope you both and everyone at the Social Justice Institute remains safe and healthy until we can meet again.
Thank you all.